What era are you currently in? My name is Mr. Beat, and I'm currently in my freaking out about the future era. Anyway, what about the eras of American politics? Huh? What about them? Answer me, Cumberbatch. While political scientists and historians have divided up American political history into different types of eras, arguably the most popular way they have done this is by what's called the party system. The party system refers to the different eras in American political history in which both the political beliefs and voters of the two major political parties remained fairly consistent. The party system gets its name due to the fact that Americans always like to party. Just kidding. The party system gets its name due to the fact that it has political parties, or basically big teams that organize to elect people to public office that generally share the same political views. When the United States first started, political parties didn't exist. In fact, the beloved first president, George Washington, warned against them. However, George must have got really sad when political parties formed anyway. But you don't need to cry, George. There are only two political parties. Well, two major ones. There are at least dozens of smaller political parties, which we call third parties. The two major ones you probably heard of because you're smart and stuff. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But wait, why are there only two major ones that tend to control everything? Punk? That's because, at the federal level anyway, the United States has plurality voting, or voting in which a citizen only gets to vote for one candidate, and the candidate who gets the most votes, aka a plurality, wins the election, even if they don't get the majority of votes. This winner-takes-all electoral system has historically discouraged third parties, and thus, the United States mostly just has a two-party system. And because the country has had a persistent two-party system since political parties first became a thing, the country has gone through several party systems. In the early years of the Republic, there were totally different political parties, man. Over the past 171 years, give or take, we've had the same two major political parties, the aforementioned Republican and Democratic parties. But the Republican Party of today is very different than the Republican Party of 171 years ago. And the Democratic Party of today is very different than the Democratic Party of 171 years ago. I mean, you should have seen this channel 171 years ago. Back then, I was only posting videos of me unboxing squishies. Times have changed. Anyway, party systems exist because political parties are constantly shifting their priorities in order to keep winning elections. In doing so, political parties evolve and even end up completely changing their minds about political issues. At one point, the Republican Party was the party of reform. Then it slowly became more conservative over time. At one time, if you were a member of the Ku Klux Klan, you were probably a proud member also of the Democratic Party. Now, if you're a member of the Ku Klux Klan, well, yeah, you were almost certainly not a member of the Democratic Party. At various points in American history, the two major political parties actually weren't that different at all when it came to most issues and policies. In this video, let's break down the 6 party systems of American political history. Wait! I thought there were now 7 party systems in American political history. 6, 7...
Oh.
The first party system emerged soon after the Constitution got ratified. On one side, you had the Federalist Party, led by folks like Alexander Hamilton and John Adams, who favored a strong federal government, a national bank, and more trade with Britain. The Federalists were generally associated with the elites and those who lived in cities. On the other side, you had the Democratic Republican Party, not to be confused with the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party of today, led by folks like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They favored a weaker federal government, which, yes, usually meant more states' rights, more trade and better relations with France, and yes, were generally against a national bank. Well, the Federalists started to dramatically lose power during the War of 1812, and by 1820, the Democratic Republicans were so dominant that President James Monroe ran for re-election virtually unopposed. However, after the economy went to the crapper and after the passing of the Missouri Compromise, which increased tensions over the expansion of slavery out west, the Democratic-Republican Party would begin to splinter, leading to the end of the first party system. The second party system is often associated with the sharp rise of democracy and populism in the United States, and it all started because of one man. For the first time, all white men could vote around the country instead of just rich, property-owning white men. And yep, the second party system is when we saw the creation of the Democratic Party, which completely revolved around Andrew Jackson, who kinda got screwed over in the presidential election of 1824. He won the plurality of votes, but still lost the election. Well, Andrew Jackson absolutely freaked out a bunch of other American politicians. They'd end up forming their own political party, literally known as the Anti-Jackson Party, but aka the National Republican Party. They're just really unoriginal with names, okay? After the country's first third party, the Anti-Masonic Party became a thing. It, and pretty much all other anti-Jackson groups, united to form the Whig Party. So yeah, again, congrats, Andrew Jackson. You created the second party system. On the Democratic Party side, led by folks like not just Jackson, but also Martin Van Buren, they tended to be for expanding democracy, obviously, very against a national bank, against high tariffs, against elitism, for a weaker federal government, more states' rights, and for territorial expansion of the United States, even if that meant stealing land and killing people to get it. On the Whig Party side, led by folks like Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams, they basically were for everything Andrew Jackson was against. They wanted a national bank, a stronger federal government, higher tariffs, and were even implicitly cool with elitism. Speaking of a stronger federal government, the Whigs tended to support large infrastructure projects that could only be financed by the federal government. Oh, and the Whigs were against the territorial expansion of the United States, especially during the Mexican-American War. Never as tight of a coalition as the Democratic Party was, anyway. The Whigs began to splinter by the early 1850s. And the main thing they disagreed about? The expansion of slavery out west. In fact, new third parties emerged, like the Liberty Party and Free Soil Party, completely focused on the slavery issue. After the Kansas-Nebraska Act got rid of the Missouri Compromise in 1854, thus making a lot of abolitionist Northerners mad, the Whig Party completely collapsed and a new third party, the Republican Party, would form. The third party system highly revolved around the American Civil War. The issue of slavery, which obviously was the main underlying cause of the Civil War, caused the third party system to happen to begin with. But the war continued to have huge political influence even decades after it ended, despite this being a distinct political era marked by rising American nationalism, a push toward modernization, and the Gilded Age, a period known for extreme wealth inequality and corruption. The Democratic Party survived mostly because it adapted to the changing times. Still, it was the aforementioned Republican Party that dominated during during the third party system. The first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who is often also considered the greatest American president, was extremely influential, and pretty much every Republican politician following him during this era was trying to be the next Lincoln. I mean, they even all had beards, led by Lincoln and later folks like Ulysses Grant. The Republican Party generally was for equal rights for African Americans. Well, African American men, for a stronger federal government, for higher tariffs, and for Reconstruction policies. Or when the federal government had a much heavier role over state governments as southern states got reorganized and re-entered the Union following the Civil War. This time, the Democratic Party didn't have as tight of a coalition. You had folks in the party for the gold standard, but others passionately against it. For example, led by folks like Stephen Douglas and then later Grover Cleveland, they generally were against equal rights for African Americans, for a weaker federal government, more states' rights, against higher tariffs, and against Reconstruction policies. And due to the Civil War, the two major political parties during this time were often split geographically. Democratic Party voters were overwhelmingly in the South, and Republican Party voters were overwhelmingly in the North. By the 1890s, a new third party called the People's Party and a broader populist movement had taken the country by storm. And new issues became more important to voters, such as ending monopolies, restricting the consumption of alcohol, worker rights, and consumer protection laws. While both the Democratic and Republican parties would survive this time, they only did so because they dramatically changed their platforms. Plus, the country had been going through its longest and most severe economic depression yet. Most of the fourth party system was dominated by the Progressive Era, that period of widespread reform and activism between roughly 1890 and 1920. Sure, the economy had recovered by the late 1890s, but Americans had not forgotten the damage giant corporations had done to the country. Suddenly, both the Republican Party and Democratic Party had become reform-minded, supporting things like taxing the super wealthy, breaking up monopolies, ending corruption in politics, expanding worker rights, and expanding democracy, which included giving women the right to vote and letting citizens directly elect their U.S. senators. Still, the two major political parties had their differences. On the Democratic Party side, led by folks like Woodrow Wilson and William Jennings Bryan, they tended to be against imperialism and more for free trade and deregulation, while the Republican Party, led by folks like William McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt, tended to be more pro-imperialism, for more protectionism, and for more laws regulating businesses. Due to Republicans being more proactive on progressive legislation, they were the dominant political party during the fourth party system. I mean, Woodrow Wilson mostly got elected due to a split within the Republican Party between Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft. Speaking of split, World War I and its aftermath momentarily saw the Republican Party unify, but flash forward to 1929, and now the country was going through the Great Depression, the worst global economic crisis in history. Because the Republican Party was the party in power and was at least partially to blame for making the Depression worse, suddenly the Democratic Party became very popular. The fifth party system is also often called the New Deal party system due to its close association with Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal programs. The New Deal was a series of reforms put into place by Roosevelt in response to the Great Depression. They not only had the goal of ending the Depression and aiding Americans hurt by it, but also creating laws and programs to make sure something like the Depression would never happen again. And sure, the New Deal didn't end the Great Depression, but these reforms were so popular that Roosevelt became became extremely popular. To this date, he's the only one to ever get elected president 4 times. And after Roosevelt died, future presidents and politicians, both in Roosevelt's Democratic Party, but also in the opposing Republican Party, mostly worked hard to preserve and even expand the New Deal. For example, the Democratic President Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs were basically just an extension of the New Deal. So yeah, on the Democratic Party side, led by folks like Roosevelt and Johnson, they generally supported expanding the federal government in the name of protecting social welfare, expanding civil rights, expanding worker rights, and social liberalism. The Republican Party, on the other hand, led by folks like Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon, wanted to keep the federal government a bit smaller while protecting social welfare, thought states should generally expand civil rights, generally supported business interests over worker rights, and social conservatism. But, similar to the fourth party system, both of the major political parties had very similar economic and foreign policies during the fifth party system, especially with regards to strong opposition to the Soviet Union and its communist government and command economy. After all, this era overlapped quite a bit with the Cold War. The fifth party system began to collapse for 2 reasons. First, events like the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal caused a lot of Americans to lose trust in the federal government. And second, the rise of Ronald Reagan and similar limited government Republicans convinced tens of millions of Americans that
government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Oh, and did I mention that the country was also going through another economic crisis? Stagflation. The six-party system was dominated by 2 things: neoliberalism and neoconservatism. Neo and neo. Oh yeah, that neo was popular during this time as well. Neoliberalism is a political movement that prioritizes personal liberty and free market competition. Neoconservatism is a political movement that promotes aggressively spreading American values, typically conservative values, around the world, even if that means military intervention. During the six-party system, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party spent decades mostly on the same page when it came to both economic and foreign policy, whether people who lived through this time are willing to admit it or not. And yet, just like with the third party system, the 2 major political parties during this time were often split geographically. But this time, Democratic Party voters were overwhelmingly in the North, and Republican Party voters were overwhelmingly in the South. On the Republican Party side, led by folks like Ronald Reagan and Dick Cheney, yeah, I'm not joking, Dick Cheney, they generally supported more aggressive foreign policy, lowering taxes as much as possible, and social conservatism. On the Democratic Party side, led by folks like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, they generally supported a less aggressive foreign policy, higher taxes on the wealthy to pay for more social programs, and social progressivism. Indeed, the six-party system is when we saw lots of progress on social issues, from same-sex marriage to the legalization of cannabis to the growing acceptance of the transgender community. However, it's also when we saw growing polarization. Polarization more dramatic than anything the country had ever seen, going all the way back to right before the Civil War. Whoa. I'm not saying that the country is about to enter another civil war, but we are going through some major changes right now. More than anything, the collapse of the six-party system seems to be a backlash to the extreme wealth inequality and increase in government corruption we've seen since the Great Recession, as well as a backlash to very unpopular foreign interventions like the Iraq War and war in Afghanistan. Over the last few years, we've seen both the Democratic Party and Republican Party start to rebel against free trade and even capitalism itself. Yes, my clone was right. Thank you. In my opinion, I think we are now in the 7th party system, and I think it's mostly because of one man. Okay, maybe two. And that man was Donald Trump. Him becoming president has changed the Republican Party, man. It's now more populist, nationalist, and protectionist. I mean, a great example of this is the fact that the United States currently has its highest effective tariff rate since the early 1930s. It has increasingly rejected internationalism, or the cooperation and collaboration among different nations. It has increasingly rejected both neoconservatism and neoliberalism, while embracing post-liberalism, a political movement that promotes the idea that both liberalism and individualism are hurting society more than helping it. But it's probably not just Donald Trump. The Democratic Party is changing too. Folks like Bernie Sanders, who nearly got the Democratic Party's nomination for the presidency in both 2016 and 2020, have also been influential in helping the party embrace populism and move further to the left on economic issues. During the 7th party system, the Republican Party has had more success reaching rural voters, and the Democratic Party has had more success reaching college-educated suburban voters. Now, I should say that there are political scientists out there who disagree with me, but they're full of crap! What the heck? Just kidding. That was mean. They make good points. The fact that political polarization still persists, that yeah, sure, the presidency may have changed, but Congress hasn't changed so much since the 6-party system, or it's just too darn early to analyze this since some of this stuff happening recently might just be temporary blips. These are all reasons why other political scientists argue we're still in the 6-party system. Then again, there are other political scientists who argue that we're still in the 5th party system. So who the heck knows? All this stuff is made up anyway. All this stuff is made up anyway. But what do you think? Do you think the United States is currently in the 7th party system? Or do you not agree with me? How dare you if so? But wait, why? Why the heck would you not agree with me? You dillweed? Sorry, that was harsh. Look, just try to explain yourself in the comments and perhaps we can have a constructive dialogue. All right then, go on. Start typing away. Thanks for staying curious.